In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all went to be registered, each to his own town. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth, to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth, and she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. Luke chapter 2 records in familiar words the very simple account of the most significant birth in the history of the world. The text impresses reality upon us, the reality of time and space, real time, not mythological time in Narnia or Middle Earth. We were not speaking here of an imaginary concept of a time long, long ago. We're dealing here with a matter of history. Bethlehem and Nazareth, they're real places. As I mulled over these familiar words this morning, I was amazed by the sovereignty of God. First, that God has sovereign control over time and space. We all live in a particular time in history, the 2020 pandemic. We all live in a particular space. For me, that's Texas. We do not live where we do, when we do, by accident. God is in control of all these factors. Acts 17:26 tells us that God made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. The simple fact is, God moves people around. Diane and I lived the majority of our lives in the Midwest, and the idea of living in Texas, it never occurred to us until 2006. We filled out resumes, we had interviews literally all over the country, and then we were invited to interview in Giddings, Texas. A church was looking for a pastor, and a pastor was looking for a church. We could diminish this to just human planning, but it's so much more. We must at least acknowledge God's sovereignty over such matters as these. In so many respects, Jesus was born at a time of God's sovereign choosing, yet it was not at a time suited to the innkeeper. In the fullness of time, as revenue collection was being carried out, Mary and Joseph traveled back to Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. At a particular time in history, a young couple, imminently expecting their first baby, traveled from one place to another. God's sovereign control over people and events is clearly seen in the birth of Jesus. Caesar, who wanted tax revenue, called for a census, but God was directing it all in order to get Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem. Hundreds of years earlier, the prophet Micah specifically predicted that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Mary and Joseph, however, they didn't live there. So how would they arrive there in order for this prophecy to be fulfilled? They would do so by God's sovereignty. God ensured that revenue was desired and a census ordered in order that Joseph and Mary would return to Bethlehem. Now we could ask why God didn't use a simpler way to get this couple to Bethlehem. He had spoken to them earlier by means of an angel. Couldn't he have instructed them just to take Jesus to Bethlehem like taking Jesus to Egypt? Why did he go to such elaborate plans to move them from one place to another? I suggest that God has the right to show off his power and control. He is in control. He is the one and only God. And sometimes he has the right to prove it. God is perfectly within his rights to display his sovereign power however he sees fit. For a perfect being to do so is praise-inducing for me. In one sense, it may have appeared an inefficient way of doing things, but God is anything but inefficient. Rest assured that our times are in God's hands. We must refuse to give way to anxiety and unbelief. God is in control of everything. The birth of a child, the mysterious gift of life that is given to a man and a woman to hold in their arms. The birth of a child is a wonderful thing. When a child is conceived, an eternal soul is brought into being, and the parents of the child have eternal responsibilities to that soul. Jesus was born in poverty, indignity, obscurity, and rejection. Humility must necessarily precede greatness, and it is through Jesus' poverty that you and I are made right. Jesus would become great during his life, and particularly at his resurrection and ascension, but there is no hint of greatness in a baby being born in a stable. These 7 verses show us the humanity of Jesus and how unwelcome and rejected he was to many. Through his humiliation, Jesus purchased for us an eternal home in glory. The Son of God became the Son of Man so that the sons of men could become the children of God. As you consider the sovereign control of God over time and space, people and events, and human birth, don't forget that in his sovereign control, God was thinking and is thinking of you.